Have you ever imagined what you'd do if you looked through a locked door and saw that man from the thumbnail waiting for you with a weapon? What if there was no way out? Tonight, we're diving into 3 true stories that prove you are never as alone as you think you are. Whether you're working the night shift or exploring where you shouldn't be, these encounters will make you lock every door twice. It was 1014 a.m. on a Tuesday during the middle of summer break. My friend Leo and I were sweating through our dark t-shirts, standing at the back of our high school. We were just bored kids obsessed with exploring places we weren't supposed to be. The school had been locked down for weeks, sitting like a concrete fortress at the edge of town. Leo knew about a loose grate near the old gymnasium's boiler room. It took a lot of pushing, but we managed to slide it open and crawl into the pitch-black ventilation shaft. Dropping down into the main hallway felt like stepping onto another planet. The air inside was heavy and dead, thick with the smell of stale floor wax and old paper. The only light came from the orange street lamps filtering through the high, narrow windows. We walked down the English corridor, keeping our flashlights off to avoid the security cameras. The silence was absolute, broken only by the wet squeak of our sneakers on the polished linoleum. Every shadow stretched out across the floor, playing tricks on my tired eyes. We made it to the central rotunda without any issues. That was when I saw the movement out of the corner of my eye. Down the adjacent science wing, a dark shape shifted near a row of lockers. I grabbed Leo's arm and pulled him behind a thick concrete pillar. I whispered that I saw something, but my brain was already trying to rationalize it. I told myself it was just a trick of the security floodlights bouncing off the glass display cases. When the shape moved again, I tried to convince myself it was just some homeless guy who had found a way into sleep. It made sense. The school was massive and completely empty, but the way this person was moving destroyed that comforting lie. The figure wasn't just walking or looking for a place to crash. It was crouching low to the ground, hugging the wall with its limbs splayed out in an awkward, spider-like posture. It was sneaking through the halls, exactly like we were. My chest tightened until it ached, making it incredibly hard to draw a full breath. The figure paused right at the edge of the shadows, turning its head in our exact direction. It knew we were there. We stayed completely frozen behind the pillar, praying the shape would just turn around and leave. Instead, it darted forward, crossing a wide patch of moonlight shining through the ceiling skylight. For 2 horrible seconds we saw it clearly. It was a man, but his clothes were shredded into filthy ribbons. His right arm hung at a grotesque, unnatural angle like it was snapped entirely in half. But the worst part was his face, which was covered in a thick, dark liquid that caught the moonlight. It was blood. A lot of it. He was grinning this wide, vacant smile right at the pillar where we were hiding. Leo didn't even whisper a countdown. We both just bolted. We turned and sprinted back the way we came, completely abandoning any attempt to stay quiet. I could hear heavy, slapping footsteps echoing on the tiles directly behind us. The sound was erratic, completely out of rhythm, but it was getting faster. We threw ourselves through the gym doors and scrambled toward the boiler room. I dove into the vent first, scraping my shoulders against the rusted metal as I clawed my way to the outside. Leo scrambled out right behind me, gasping for air as we collapsed into the damp grass. We didn't look back to see if a face was peering out of the grate. We ran all the way to my house without saying a single word to each other. I locked my front door, ran up to my bedroom, and just sat on the edge of my bed until the sun came up. I tried to tell myself we had just escaped a crazy squatter. I never brought it up to Leo again, and we never went back to explore that school. The memory alone was enough to keep me awake at night. But the real horror didn't set in until the next morning. When I finally stood up to fully open my bedroom blinds, I saw something that still makes me sick to my stomach. Pressed against the outside of the glass, right at eye level, was a perfectly clear, smeared, bloody handprint. My bedroom is on the 2nd floor, It was a Thursday at 11:42 p.m., and I was the only one left on the fourth floor. I'd stayed late waiting for some massive video files to finish rendering, just staring blankly at my monitors. The office building was completely dead. I finally packed my bag and headed out to the main elevator. Taking this exact lift down to the subterranean parking garage was something I did every single night. The routine had become second nature. I didn't even have to think about it. I had my noise-canceling headphones jammed in, blasting music to wake my brain up. My eyes were glued to my phone screen, mindlessly scrolling through a feed. I felt completely insulated in my own little bubble, assuming the building was as secure as it always was. The elevator chimed softly as it hit level P3. The metal door slid open, letting in that familiar, heavy smell of stale exhaust and damp concrete. I didn't even look up at first. I just stepped forward by pure muscle memory. I bumped hard into something solid. I ripped my headphones off, stumbling backward in confusion. A man was standing perfectly still, positioned dead center in the elevator doorway. He wasn't trying to get in. He was intentionally blocking me from getting out. He was wearing a filthy mechanic's jumpsuit, but the thing that made my stomach drop into my shoes was his face. He was staring directly at me, his eyes impossibly wide and completely unblinking. He didn't speak. He didn't even seem to be breathing. The elevator doors automatically tried to close, but they hit his heavy shoulder and bounced back open. I had maybe 3 seconds to react. I tried to shift to the left to squeeze past him, but the literal moment I moved, he reacted. He leaned down in this sickeningly fluid motion, matching my level to bring his face inches from mine, maintaining that dead eye contact. Pure panic took over. My chest seized up so tight I couldn't pull in a breath. I ducked hard to the right, violently shoving my shoulder into his chest, and burst out of the elevator. I didn't look back. I just sprinted into the dimly lit concrete expanse of the garage, heading for where my car was parked. That's when I heard it. The heavy, unnatural slapping of footsteps right behind me. The rhythm was completely wrong. It was jerky and disproportionate, sounding like his legs didn't bend the right way. I risked a frantic glance over my shoulder. He was chasing me, and now, gripped tightly in his raised right hand, was a massive, rusted crowbar. He was gaining on me fast, his head tilted at a bizarre angle as he closed the distance. My car was too far away. I banked hard to the right, aiming directly for the emergency stairwell door. I grabbed the heavy metal handle, yanked it open with everything I had, threw myself inside, and let the heavy door slam shut behind me. The deadbolt clicked into place just as I backed away, panting heavily. I stared at the small reinforced wire glass window in the door. A second later, his face smashed against the glass. He didn't look angry. His expression was still completely blank. He slowly raised the crowbar and began rhythmically tapping the metal tip against the thick glass. Tap, tap, tap. The sharp, metallic clinking echoed loudly up the concrete stairwell. He just stood there staring at me, tapping away. I couldn't move. I just watched him until the automatic motion sensor lights out in the garage finally timed out, plunging the side of the door into absolute pitch blackness. The tapping kept going in the dark until the police finally arrived. I cleared out my desk the next morning. I still don't know what he wanted from me, but I know exactly what would have happened if I hadn't made it to that reinforced door. It was a Wednesday at 11:58 p.m., and I was already dreading the next 8 hours. My shift was just starting. I was locked inside a 6x6 fiberglass toll booth on a privately owned, unmarked access road, sitting miles deep in the heavy timberline. The job paid an absolutely insane $45 an hour for a strictly cash-only midnight to 8 a.m. shift. The only bizarre requirement on the online listing was extremely specific applicants must not have a local accent, nor could they be from the immediate surrounding counties. I was born and raised just 2 towns over, but for that kind of money, I lied on my resume and faked a flat, generic Midwestern voice. I justified the weird rule to myself instantly. I figured these wealthy, secluded property owners just didn't want local townies gossiping about who was driving up their private mountain road late at night. My first night on the job, the night manager, giant, broad-shouldered guy who introduced himself as Vance, stood outside my booth window. He leaned in uncomfortably close, staring at me without blinking, and started speaking in thick, rapid-fire local Appalachian slang, testing me. My chest tightened immediately, and my palms started sweating against the cold metal of the cash register. I knew exactly what he was saying, but I played dumb, giving him a confused, blank stare until he finally smirked, tapped the glass, and walked away. For the first few weeks, the job was exactly as described. I just collected loose change and dollar bills from the occasional tinted luxury SUV. But around the third week, the envelope started. Drivers would hand me the standard toll coins, but tucked underneath their hands would be a thick, heavy manila envelope wrapped aggressively in clear packing tape. They never spoke a single word to me. They just handed over the cash and the packages, and I silently dropped the envelopes into a locked steel drop box under my register. The heavy smell of stale cigarette smoke and burnt motor oil leaked from their roll-down windows every single time, clinging to my uniform long after they drove away. I knew deep down it was illegal. You don't make $45 an hour to sit in a plastic box in the pitch black. But the cash was too good, and my bank account was finally full. So I kept my head down and my mouth shut. Then, one night, Vance came down to the booth around 4 a.m. with a thermos of coffee. He poured me a cup and leaned against the doorframe. He clinked his plastic cup against mine, smiled this dead, completely flat smile, and said, "To the drop, keeping these mountain trash families exactly where they belong." I drank the coffee, but my stomach tied itself into a knot. I just nodded, pretending I didn't understand the gravity of what he was implying. 2 nights later, I made the biggest mistake of my life. My brother called my cell phone in a complete panic. He had blown a tire on the treacherous lower highway and didn't have a spare. Thinking I was completely alone, I ducked down below the booth counter to hide. I started talking fast, completely dropping my fake voice and slipping right back into our heavy local dialect to calm him down, using slang only people from our exact valley used. When I hung up and stood back up, Vance was standing directly on the other side of my glass window. The heavy, wet crunch of gravel under his boots had been completely masked by the wind. He was just staring at me, his eyes wide and calculating. After a painfully long silence, he asked me how my brother was doing, using the exact hyper-local slang term I had just whispered on the phone. My throat felt like sandpaper. I couldn't even force a word out. He didn't yell, and he didn't try to open the door. He just leaned into the speaker grate and said, "Shift's over at 8. Wait in the booth. The boss wants to come down and discuss a promotion." He turned and walked slowly back up the dark road. I didn't wait a single second. As soon as his taillights disappeared around the bend, I grabbed my backpack. I didn't even take my car, knowing they probably had my plates and registration on file. I shoved the booth door open and bolted straight into the thick tree line. I sprinted blindly through the dark woods, tearing my jacket on briars and tripping over unseen roots, just running and running until the sun finally came up. I hitched a ride at a desolate gas station 3 towns over. I never went back to retrieve my car, and I never went back to my apartment. I packed whatever I could fit into a single duffel bag and moved 3 states away. I still don't know exactly what they were moving in those envelopes, but I know they weren't going to let me leave that booth alive.